Pack your bags, we're headed on a big old ride, with dreams of sunlit shores and the open skies, from the hills of Cyprus to where the world collides.
Today, we're looking at Rob and Mandy's trip to Sardinia back in May 2025.
That's right. They flew in from Cyprus, stopped over in Malta first, and then headed to Sardinia.
And we're going to trace their journey across the island, Cagliari, Sassari, Alghero.
And those day trips they did, Pula and Iglesias too.
Exactly. It's not a full minute by minute, but more about, well, what their choices might tell us. What were they hoping to find?
The departure point mentioned is Paphos Airport. They apparently left after a late lunch near the beach in Cyprus.
Sets the scene a bit, doesn't it? Already traveling.
And the mode of travel is, well, pretty standard these days. They flew Ryanair.
Right. The source even gives the flight time. What was it?
2 hours and 40 minutes, it says, to get to Malta.
Which is pretty quick, really, crossing that stretch of the Med in under 3 hours.
Exactly. It highlights that speed of modern travel, hopping between islands, between countries.
And that speed continues when they land, doesn't it? They mentioned grabbing a taxi service straight away.
Yeah, a Bolt cab, specifically. So, modern app-based ride-sharing, straight from the airport.
So you go from tarmac in one country to local streets in another pretty seamlessly.
Very quickly. And the source is clear. This was purely transit, just an overnight, then moving on.
Land, check in, sleep, basically prepare for the next leg.
That's the idea. So how do you actually experience a place like that?
Well, this is where it gets interesting, the accommodation. They stayed at the Talbot and Bonds guest house in Guja.
And this is the detail that jumps out. It's described as being converted from a 400-year-old farmhouse.
Wow, 400 years. That's quite something.
Isn't it just? So you arrive on a modern jet, grab a modern taxi service.
And then you sleep inside walls that have stood for 4 centuries.
Precisely. Even just for a few hours, it immediately kind of anchors this super fast transit in some deep history.
And it seems one of them, Rob, made the most of the short time, even with it just being an overnight.
Yeah, he went for an early morning walk, just on the local streets, the Guja area.
Not a big planned tour or anything.
No, just exploring on foot before things got busy, it seems.
And this is where more history pops up, right? Even on a simple walk.
Exactly. He came across St. Mary's Parish Church, described as impressive.
And there's a date mentioned for the church.
Yes, consecrated December 11th, 1785.
Wow. So late 18th century, you just stumble upon that wandering around before breakfast?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Imagine seeing that just there, part of the street.
This source also mentions another chapel.
The Chapel of the Annunciation. Noted for having colorful flags out. And apparently he was snapping photos.
So it paints a picture of history just being present, not locked away, but part of the everyday fabric.
One of the first things that stands out is how easy their arrival seemed.
Absolutely. They flew in from Malta, landed at Cagliari Airport.
And boom, a quick train ride, was it 15 minutes?
Just 15 minutes on the local train, straight into the city center. The source really highlights that accessibility.
No messing around with long transfers. That's a great start to any trip, isn't it?
It really is. You're not wasting time. You're getting right into the experience.
So they got settled in near Via Napoli and pretty much immediately went out exploring.
The source says they started with the seafront street. You get that sense of the arcades, the architecture.
Right, just soaking it in first before hitting specific sites. That sounds like a good approach.
Definitely. Getting that initial feel for the place, its atmosphere.
Then their exploration got a bit more, structured. Piazza del Carmine, coffee at Café Central.
Ah, the classic Italian start to the day.
Totally. But then they did something quite smart, it seems. They hopped on the Trenino Cagliaritano.
The little red train. Yes, the source mentions that.
Which sounds perfect for navigating those really narrow cobbled streets in the old Castello district.
Exactly. You probably couldn't drive a car through there easily. So the train isn't just transport, it's part of the experience, right?
It gets you into the heart of the medieval city.
Yeah.
Then they walked up Largo Carlo Felice, saw the jacaranda trees, past the old Roman amphitheater remains.
Heading up towards the Castello area.
And the source adds this nice little detail, stopping for lunch in the old square, having a beer.
And chatting with another couple, Americans, I think.
Yeah, an American couple on a walking holiday. It just shows those spontaneous moments are key, too. The next day, Rob went for an early walk.
And found the Bastion de San Remi.
Right. With the Umberto I Terrace, the source really emphasizes the views from there.
Sweeping views, it says, over the city, the port, the mountains.
It puts everything into perspective, doesn't it? Seeing this city layout after being down in the streets.
Exactly. You get the micro details from walking around, then the macro view from up high, essential for understanding a city.
While wandering those Castella streets, he also found the Elephant Tower.
Ah, yes. Built in 1307, the source notes. A real piece of history.
And it mentions the portcullis is still there, with these vicious-looking spikes.
Wow, that really brings its defensive purpose to life, doesn't it? Over 700 years old. Tangible history right there.
Definitely grounds you in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So, after exploring Cagliari, they also ventured out, took a day trip.
To Iglesias. Using the train again.
Yeah, about an hour from Cagliari station. And the source points out the trains were good, modern, comfy.
And pretty cheap, too. Which makes day trips like that really feasible.
It does. Easy regional exploration.
It shows how Cagliari can be a great base.
Now here's an interesting little twist the source includes. In Iglesias,
What was that?
they were expecting to see streets full of colorful hanging umbrellas. You know, like you see in photos sometimes.
Yeah, right. Those Instagrammable spots.
Exactly. But they got there and hardly any.
Oh.
They figured maybe they were just too early in the season.
That's a fascinating detail. It really speaks to that gap that can happen between our expectations, often shaped by images, and the reality on the ground.
Yeah, travel isn't always exactly like the pictures. They left Cagliari, right? The main city.
Yeah, they started from Cagliari, hopped on a bus heading south. Lots of energy in the city, apparently.
And then almost straight away, you hit this really interesting contrast. You leave the urban sprawl and find yourself on this narrow causeway.
Right, a road sort of suspended between the sea on one side and wetlands on the other.
Exactly. Salt flats, lots of bird life, quite the dramatic shift from the city bustle.
And they actually saw flamingos, like dozens of them, just out the bus window.
Imagine that. Just, part of the commute almost.
Yeah.
A flash of pink against the landscape.
Yeah.
It really shows how close nature is, even near the city.
It definitely sets a tone, doesn't it? Leaving the familiar behind very quickly. It's only about, 40 kilometers?
Something like that. So after the causeway, the bus route apparently went through some pine groves, little coastal villages. Pretty scenic, I gather.
Yeah, sounds lovely. And then after about an hour, they arrive in Pula itself.
And that's where they started exploring on foot, the village proper.
They mention the narrow streets, which, okay, you expect in an old European village.
The really striking thing they noted was these colorful flags
Yeah.
strung up overhead right across the streets.
Oh, wow. That must create such a festive atmosphere, really vibrant.
Totally. It adds this layer of modern life, maybe tradition, onto the old structure of the village. History.
Yeah.
But alive,
Yeah, animated. They also saw a church, the Church of San Giovanni Battista.
Ah, yes, 13th century. Romanesque Pisan style, apparently. A nice bit of historical architecture.
And they stopped for lunch, too, sounds like. Kept it simple, a village platter, Caesar salad at a place called Shari Bistro.
Right, grounding the experience. But then, it seems like the most intriguing discovery happened almost by accident on their way back.
Ah, the Villa St. Maria. This sounds fascinating.
It really does. So it's this beautiful villa built back in 1838. Interesting enough on its own.
But there's more to it.
Well, yeah. It was built directly on the ruins of an older church that had the same name.
Wow, so you've got literal layers there. 19th century building sitting right on top of medieval foundations, maybe even older.
Could be. And the villa itself sounds gorgeous, but here's the catch. It's usually closed to the public.
Right, they mentioned that. You can't just wander in.
It only opens for specific events. We're looking at their journey from Cagliari up to Sassari, and especially their experience of the Sardinian cavalcade.
Exactly. We've got their notes, so we'll dig into the highlights, that scenic train trip, arriving in Sassari, and then, of course, the main event.
Okay, let's get into it. The train journey itself is quite interesting, choosing Trenitalia over flying.
Yeah, it's about a 3-hour trip, apparently, and it sounds like it was really worth it for the views.
Totally. They mention weaving through the countryside, hills, valleys, a proper introduction to the island's landscape before even hitting the city.
Gives you a real sense of place, doesn't it? So they arrive, grab a taxi to their apartment. It's near Piazza Domenico Alberto Azzuni.
Right. And then they head out. First impressions, Piazza Castello, food stalls starting to set up, that everyday buzz.
And kind of serendipitously, they wander over to Piazza Italia, and boom, preparations for the Cavalcata Sarda are in full swing.
Talk about timing. You can just imagine the atmosphere building already.
Definitely. They finish the day pretty chilled, though. Drinks at Bar Daniele, then some tapas nearby at Taverna Sant'Ona, soaking it all in.
Sounds like a good first day. And the second day, they explored Sassari a bit more deeply.
Yeah, just walking the streets, seeing the locals out shopping on, a normal summer day, getting the feel of the place beyond the festival buzz.
That contrast is important, isn't it? Seeing the city in its regular rhythm.
And they hit a local farmer's market. Fresh fruit, vegetables, stop for a coffee. Those little moments.
Real slice of life stuff. But the evening brought them back to the festival atmosphere.
It did. Back to Piazza Italia. This time, Sardinian performers were on stage. Big crowd, lots of people already in traditional costumes.
So the cultural immersion is really ramping up by this point. And they caught some local music later, too.
Yeah, a local bar called Encinos. Eclectic music, local musicians. So they got a taste of the contemporary scene alongside the traditional stuff.
A nice mix. It shows Sassari isn't just about the history, it's a living city.
But then comes the main event, the Sardinian Cavalcade itself. Sunday morning, the whole city just transforms.
This sounds like the absolute highlight. What do they describe?
Just color everywhere, hundreds of horses and riders. And the costumes. Incredibly detailed, hand-embroidered, representing different towns from all over Sardinia.
Wow. It's not just a small local thing, then it's island-wide participation.
Not at all. It's huge. They mentioned marching bands, legions of drummers, apparently.
Drummers, too. The sound must have been incredible.
I bet. And loads of dancers in traditional outfits, more horseback riders than you could count, different folk groups.
So it's a massive procession showcasing the diversity of the whole island.
Exactly that. The streets were just buzzing, laughter, music, people at stalls grabbing beer and local food.
You get that real sense of community pride, don't you? People celebrating their heritage together, raising a glass.
Totally. Rob and Mandy called it a day of color, pride, and Sardinian joy. Sums it up perfectly, I think.
It really does. It's more than just a parade. It's a living expression of Sardinian identity, history, tradition. We're following Rob and Mandy's travels through Alghero and Fertilia in Sardinia.
Yeah, we're using their journal, Adventures in Alghero and Fertilia.
Right. And our goal is really just to pull out the highlights, give you a real sense of what they saw, especially that amazing walled city in Alghero and their little side trip.
Okay, so they started by heading from Sassari to Alghero. Quick train ride, wasn't it?
Yeah, like 40 minutes. And they immediately noticed that little Barcelona comparison.
Ah, yeah. The cobbled streets, Gothic buildings, the harbor. You can sort of picture it.
Totally. Then a taxi right into the heart of things via Roma, inside the old walled city itself.
Straight into the historic center. That must have been quite an arrival.
Sounds like it. First thing they did, Piazza Civica, grab a sandwich, a beer. Good start.
Sensible. Fuel up first.
Then they took this long walk in the afternoon along the seafront.
Okay.
Stopped for coffee, pastry near the main square, then headed out towards the Cagliari Lagoon.
That's part of a nature park, right? Yeah, the Porto Conti Regional Natural Park, so you get that immediate contrast, the tight streets of the old town, then bam, open coast and nature.
Exactly. Later on, aperitivo, dinner.
Yeah.
The usual Italian rhythm.
Of course.
But then they walked the Bastione Cristoforo Colombo, the big defensive walls right at sunset.
Ah, the best time.
And they said the old catapults looked, well, their word was evil.
Huh. Interesting choice of word. But you can kind of see it, can't you? These massive war machines silhouetted against the sunset.
Yeah, it really drives home what those walls were for. Defense. Serious business.
Definitely speaks to Alghero's past, constantly needing to protect itself.
So next morning, Rob was out exploring early, despite a bit of rain. Hit the old market, walked the bastions again. Seems like those walls really captured their imagination.
They do have that effect. Impressive structures.
Then later, they walked the marina, which is huge, apparently, and along the Lungomare Barcelona.
Oh yeah, the big seafront promenade. Great for views.
Right? They even had coffee at a place called the Magic Bar, like right on the beach. Bay views included.
Nice. Living the life.
And the views just kept coming. That evening, a rooftop bar called Blue Sky.
Oh, nice. Panorama.
Totally. Old Town, marina, hills. They even mentioned some dramatic dark clouds rolling in. Adds to the atmosphere, I guess.
Yeah, layers of views. From within the walls, from on top of the walls, and then from way above looking down on it all.
Then, on their last day, they took a little trip, a local bus, maybe 20 minutes, to Fertilia.
Okay, Fertilia. It's a bit different from Alghero, isn't it?
Yeah, very different. Small coastal place built in the 1930s. Fascist era, rationalist architecture, much more modern, planned look.
Right. Clean lines, geometric shapes, a real contrast to medieval Alghero.
They walked down to its marina, looked back across the bay towards Alghero, Another coffee stop, naturally,
Standard.
near the village square there, before checking out that College Lagoon area again. But then they found something really old.
Oh, what was that?
The Ponte Romano di Fertilia, an ancient Roman bridge, or what's left of it.
Wow, Roman remains. How much is still there?
They said 13 arches out of an original 24. Pretty cool find.
That's fantastic. Shows how deep the history goes in that area, way before Alghero's walls.
And then something completely modern, almost jarringly so. They stumbled upon the Alghero Rugby Club.
A rugby club in Fertilia.
Yeah, at San Marco Field. Apparently it was brand new, just started up in early 2024.
Huh. That's quite the mix. Roman bridge ruins and a brand new rugby team.
Right. It's a real snapshot of history and modern life coexisting.
It really is. Past and present all layered together. When you piece it all together, Cagliari, the history trips to Pula and Iglesias, the vibrant cavalcade in Sassari, then the Catalan feel of Alghero.
Wow. Yeah, they covered a lot of ground, didn't they? Culturally and geographically.
And not a huge amount of time either. It wasn't just a beach holiday, clearly.
No, not at all. The variety there, historical sites, major cultural festival, distinct city atmospheres, it really suggests a sort of deliberate effort to get a multifaceted view of Sardinia.
Trying to understand the island from different angles, history, culture, regional differences.
Mm-hmm.
So leaving Sardinia, they started with a bus to Alghero Airport.
Mm-hmm. The local airport bus.
And the cost really stood out, just €1.30.
Wow. Yeah. That's incredibly cheap. Definitely highlights good value local transport there.
Quite a contrast to what you might expect elsewhere, maybe.
But absolutely.
And their take on Alghero Airport itself, they said it was small, but seemed really well organized.
Okay, so not overwhelming. Kind of efficient. Maybe.
Yeah, they mentioned a distinct lack of the usual sort of airport chaos.
That's nice. A smoother start always helps set the tone for the whole journey, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Less stress.
Definitely. So from Alghero, they hopped on an Air Italia flight.
Right. Headed for Rome Fiumicino, FCO.
And it was quick. Just 45 minutes in the air.
A real short hop. Barely up and down again.
Connects the island feel to the big city hub pretty fast.
Exactly. And arriving in Rome, well, that's where their observations shifted a bit.
Yes. Rome Fiumicino, what was the first thing?
The duty-free shops. Apparently just rows and rows of them.
Okay, yeah, that sounds familiar for a big international airport.
It does. But they were really struck by it. They mentioned having to, actively navigate through all the stores just to get towards their gate.
So less of a walk past shops and more of a walk through a shopping mall that happens to have gates.
Kind of, yeah. That was the impression they gave. It makes you think about airport design, the priorities.
Commercial priorities, maybe? It certainly shapes that initial feeling of arriving somewhere new.
Definitely. But before they got totally swept up in Rome, they did reflect on Sardinia.
Right, their overall thoughts on the island itself. And it sounds like they loved it.
Overwhelmingly positive, yeah.
Yeah.
That came through really clearly.
What specifically did they like?
Well, the people, for one.
Yeah.
They couldn't say enough about how friendly and helpful the Sardinians were.
Oh, that's great to hear. Used phrases like second to none, I think.
Exactly. That kind of genuine warmth from locals.
Yeah.
It really makes a trip memorable, doesn't it? Creates such a positive vibe.
It absolutely does. And besides the people.
The cleanliness. They commented specifically on how just spotlessly clean the island seemed. Everywhere they went.
Interesting. Suggests a real sort of local pride in the environment.
I think so.
Yeah.
You often see that link between community respect and how well a place is kept. It adds to the whole pleasant experience for visitors, too. Thanks for joining us on our Sardinian visit. Join us next time on the Pizzuri 2 Travels.
Out on the highway, chasing the tide.